Welcome to today's edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Andy Reese to Author's Corner. He's written the book, The Spiritual Gifts Blueprint, God's Design for Your Gifts, Talents, and Purpose, and it's published by Chosen, a division of Baker Publishing Group, and he'll tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. Here's a little bit about Andy. He is the founder and president of Freedom Prayer, a ministry that provides a biblical model of prayer counseling, now operating through several hundred churches and teams around the world. And he has been in ministry more than 45 years and has leadership experience. So, Andy, thank you so much for being with us today on Author's Corner.
Well, thank you so much, Roberta. I appreciate it.
So there are numerous books about spiritual gifts out there. What makes yours different that people should pick up a copy of it?
Well, and I've read all those numerous books. Yeah. I think we and I have for years, we have overlooked when Paul describes spiritual gifts, he lays out a four-part structure. And the first part is charisma gifts, Romans 12. And the second part is how ministry works with Jesus. The third part is how the Father works. And the fourth part is the things we have mistakenly called spiritual gifts, which is the list in 1 Corinthians 12, tongues, prophecy, word of knowledge, faith, miracles, that list. And Paul calls those manifestations of the Spirit. You can think of those as power tools to help you use your gifting in the ministry Jesus has for you. And when you think about it that way, then things go on the right shelves, and they start to make tons of sense.
Well, in your book, because sometimes visual works so much better by having a chart and things like that, and on page 158 of your book, you spell that out. Level 1, the things of the Spirit, the different levels, and then, of course, how they are applied in our life. And you just really give us a easy way of looking at this and realize that not everything that is referenced as a gift is actually a gift, but actually ways of utilizing those gifts.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, everything God's given us is a gift, our personality, everything. But the reality is Paul is trying to describe how you connect with each member of the Trinity, and each member has a different role. The Holy Spirit gives you your charisma gift, and the Holy Spirit helps you with tongues and prophecy and those things in real time when you're in the midst of a situation. Jesus gives you your job, your career. All his parables make sense with that. And the Father energizes. He puts his force, signs his name to the checks, and he's behind you when you're using your gifting in the ministry Jesus has for you. And you find wonderful connection with the Trinity. Things get very interesting when that begins.
A phrase that you reference in your book is charisma gift, and I've never heard that particularly referenced that way. Explain to us what that is.
Well, there's been a lot of confusion about gifting, and the word gift is charisma, where we get charismatic, but we have sort of conflated and confused that. When Paul says there are charisma gifts, he is referring to a list of 7 gifts. 3 of them are serving, 3 of them are speaking, and then there's 1 leading. And they are basically like the primary colors of your gifting. And so just like there's 7 primary colors, but they cover 1 billion colors, those are 7 titles that cover 1 billion variations of those 7 things, and we each kind of have an arc. There's a circle tool that you can use, and really in 2 questions you can find your charisma gifting. And that gifting is who you are. It's like you're a foot in the body or you're an elbow. It would be horrible if you were a foot for a week and then you had to go learn to be a hand the next week. And your gifting is who you are for life. The manifestations, which we call gifts, those are your power tools, and every one of them is available to every believer when faith meets need.
Well, you mentioned that there were 2 questions. Can you share those questions with our listeners?
Yeah, I sure can, and I'll do it very quickly. One is, let's say I say to you, hey, City Council has somebody speak on a Friday night, and the person canceled. I know it's Wednesday, but would you be willing to do a talk about something they'd find interesting? Now, if your first reaction is not only no, then people just get nervous, and their friends go, don't do it. It'll ruin your life. Those are the ones whose primary gift is serving. But if you even nervously go, I could do that, I could do that, then your primary gifting is in the speaking area. And so it becomes very simple. And then in the speaking, it's what kind of sermon would you give? You could only give one, and depending on the basic motivation of that sermon, you could be primarily prophet, primary exhorter, primary teacher. On the other side, you say you're in a restaurant and a young waiter spills all these wonderful drinks on the floor. Is your first, and you're part of the wait staff, is your first move to go to the person to see if they're okay? If that's your first move, one who shows mercy. If it's to clean up the mess, it's one who serves. If it's to go to the kitchen, get the drinks that people paid for, it's one who gives. And if you just want to organize everybody to do the right thing, you're the leader. and it's been super fun to use those simple questions. And people go, oh, my gosh, is it that easy?
Wow.
And you go, yeah, it's easy.
It's just being able to have the knowledge behind it to see how easy that is to organize that personality type and what they're suited for. Let me remind the listener that I'm talking with Andy Reese regarding the book, The Spiritual Gifts Blueprint, God's Design for Your Gifts, Talents, and Purpose. It's published by Chosen, a division of Baker Publishing Group, and you're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. And so, Andy, what would you say are some of the common issues that keep people from discovering their spiritual talents and then that ministry purpose? And I especially want to key in on the word purpose.
Yes. So, first of all, that it's even a thing. If you don't know it's a thing, then you wander looking at other things. It's like anything in life you discover, oh, I didn't realize there was scuba diving. Oh, my gosh, I love it. You know, it's that kind of a thing. And when you discover that these gifts are really a thing and that you walk in them your whole life, then you can get interested in it. And the book will lead you exactly how to discover it. But the next thing is then Jesus says, I'm going to take you with your gifting, and I'm going to invite you, and you will just begin to notice things. You'll feel a sense of wanting to do this thing, get involved in that thing. And you'll start little. All of his parables are, if you're faithful in little, I'll give you much. All of his parables are, if you're faithful with minus, I'll give you cities. And so when you read all his parables, you realize faithful in unseen, secret things where my faithfulness and my kindness is being viewed and tested by God, so I don't make my mistakes in front of 10,000 people. I make it in front of a store clerk, you know. And if I'm faithful in those little things, you watch and see what happens. You will stumble over the purposes of Jesus. He and the Father are more vested in you finding them. It's like parents hiding Easter eggs. They are vested in them finding Easter eggs. And that's the way you finding more and more and more about your purpose. And your purpose will form over time and get clarity. And when you've been at this a few years ago, I know what my purpose is. I use my gifting in this kind of way. That's how I operate. And that's it. I use my gifting in this kind of way, and it's so exciting to me. And then you say, let me tell you stories about the Father. You say, yeah, tell me your stories, because people have stories.
Yes. Well, talk to us about the difference between a specific kingdom ministry and a career path.
I would say that we have erroneously caused some things to be spiritual and some things not spiritual. All of life is spiritual. Your job is a place where you're gifting, because there can be more ministry, more friendship, and more truth communicated over lunch with a coworker who never goes to church than at church. And so you are a gifted individual sent into the world, and all of your appointments are already scheduled by God. You will run into them. And knowing that that's the thing causes you to look for an adventure nearly every day. You just go, okay, this is the thing, this is the thing. And you look back over the last few years ago, somebody says, how did that start? You know, you doing this and that, and then you two started this business, and then it gives half its money to charity in Africa. And you go, let me tell you, it started with a chance cup of coffee at Ugly Mug's coffee place. And you just go, oh, that's the Father. I got it.
Some people talk about the spiritual gifts as if we only have one. Is that something you believe, or do you believe that as believers we have multiple spiritual gifts?
Well, it depends on your definition. The list in 1 Corinthians 12, tongues, prophecy, those 9 things, all of those are available to you when faith meets need. If you want to call them gifts, you can, but God doesn't and Paul doesn't. Those are manifestations, and you have one. But let me ask, how many personalities do you have? Well, unless you're DID, you have one personality. Spiritual gifts are just like that. You have one spiritual gift. It grows, it morphs, it changes over time, and in a pinch, you can do anything in the body. Let's say your gift is teaching, and a tornado hits Nashville. They don't need teachers. Mm-hmm. They need you to put on old clothes and go help them dig out of the rubble. And so you act as one who serves, but you're acting that way, but you live one place, but you can go and do anything. Mm-hmm. But you only live comfortably and grow comfortably one place. And interestingly, if you look at that gift circle, the serving and speaking are actually matched across the circle, kind of Enneagram-like. They match each other. So they each have the same basic motivation, but one does it with speaking and one does it with serving. So it's very interesting.
Well, Andy, I understand that you actually have a workbook that works in unity with your book. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's a few people have said to me, Andy, I love this book, but I could never teach it. And in a Bible study, who would do the teaching? And so I produced the workbook. And the workbook takes all the pressure off a Bible study leader or an individual. You just go through the workbook, and by the end of the workbook, you will have gone through, thought about, talked about, and understood each of the concepts in the book.
Wonderful. Well, once again, I've been talking to Andy Reese about his book, The Spiritual Gifts Blueprint, God's Design for Your Gifts, Talents, and Purpose. So, Andy, how can people find out more about your book?
Well, I think probably the best place is to purchase a copy on Amazon. There's 4 or 5 other places, but people never remember those places. You can look up the book, and different advertisers will say, yeah, you can buy it through me, you can buy it through me. So, yeah, I would say that right now that's the best place to do it. If you're just crazy need an autographed copy, and I'm dangerous saying this, but you can email me at waterprobooks@gmail.com, and we can have a discussion about that.
All right. So the book again is The Spiritual Gifts Blueprint, God's Design for Your Gifts, Talents, and Purpose. And we've been talking with Andy Reese. And we do thank Chosen, a division of Baker Publishing Group, for giving us a copy of the book to talk about. And Andy, it's been a pleasure having you on Author's Corner.
Thanks, Roberta. Your questions were just great. Appreciate it.
And to our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. If you missed any part of today's interview or would like to hear it again, because there was a lot of information shared, you can certainly find it on your favorite podcast platform or through kneo.org. I'm Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.
The world is in chaos. You're here for a purpose. What does the Bible have to say about it all? I'm Mark Taylor, host of Crosspoint podcast and radio show, and I'd like to invite you to join me each week as I navigate the complexities of faith, culture, and personal growth. Each week, I interview a different guest who is making an impact on the culture for God's kingdom. Whether you're seeking spiritual guidance, true information, or a fresh perspective, this podcast equips you to discern truth in today's chaotic world. When Christianity intersects with everyday life, that's where you'll find Crosspoint, sometimes discussing the issues that some churches don't want to talk about. Look up Crosspoint with Mark Taylor wherever you get your podcast, produced by KNEO Radio and the Sky High Podcast Network.